What's going on, guys? Andrew Piluk Hockey here, back again with another video. Today we're going to be looking at the Toronto Maple Leafs goaltending situation and some possible trade options depending on how the health of Freddie and Campbell goes going forward, because they both have been injured multiple times. We know that Jack Campbell's currently battling through an injury and still playing tonight. Before this video should be uploaded before the game, but he will be playing, he will be starting, but he's not 100%. Freddie Andersen could end up on long-term injured reserve, and we'll get into all of that and then look at some possible trade options if that is the case, because I believe Luke Fox posted an article that we will be checking out with some options. I'll give my opinion on it, and then we'll kind of just talk about maybe if it makes sense, because the Leafs can't win games without, a decent goaltender backing them up. You can't win hockey games without a goaltender at least saving you a few games here and there. And to be honest, when Freddie Andersen came to Toronto, he was doing that. Jack Campbell this year has done that a couple times as well. But if neither of them can stay healthy and Freddie Andersen can't, play consistent good games, they have to figure out something here. So just to give a little bit of a background, the Toronto Maple Leafs can make a move on the goaltending position if Freddie Andersen or Jack Campbell end up on long-term injured reserve. Now, knock on wood, because as much as I don't want Freddie to be injured, maybe for his health and the longevity of his career, it would make more sense for him to go on long-term injured reserve and get himself back into shape, get himself healthy, and then come back healthy in the playoffs if he is able to. Maybe his season is actually done for good, but you have to look at what teams like the Tampa Bay Lightning have done. Look at Nikita Kucherov. They're keeping him out. They're making sure that he's 100%, and then he'll come back in the playoffs. But what that also does is saves the Tampa Bay Lightning a ton of cap space. They put him on long-term injured reserve. Cap space is nothing in the playoffs. So once you get into the playoffs, he can come back and it doesn't affect their cap situation. So the Leafs could effectively do that with Frederik Andersen, and it would save them like $5 million, technically against the cap. They would be able to upgrade in the goaltending position if they wanted to, unless they were, unless they felt safe with Campbell and Hutchinson. They would be able to probably make a cheaper move on the blue line, and probably make a decent move at the forward position as well. So Freddie going on long-term injured reserve would save them some money. So because we're talking about Freddie Andersen, we might as well move over to his numbers this year. Now, I know he takes a lot of heat, and I haven't been, as faithful in his game, but he hasn't been that good this year. A 2.91 goals against average and a .897. But, statistically, this is obviously his worst season since coming to the Toronto Maple Leafs. But he has been really, really good in previous years for Toronto. He's, the first season, like Matthews' rookie season, the Leafs had no business making the playoffs. They had no business doing any of that. But Freddie stole a lot of games, and he played quite well for them. Even last year against Columbus, he let in a couple bad ones, but he actually played well in that series if you go back and look at the numbers. And I think we might be able to see the numbers on this page if I can figure it out here. Yes, okay, so we can look at it. So against Columbus, he had a .936 and a 1.84 goals against. His numbers in the playoffs, besides the 17-18, he's had really good playoff success. And then obviously regular season, like I was saying, this is statistically his worst season since coming to Toronto. But, the Leafs can't just be like, oh, well, we like you, Freddie. They need to go out there and make the best move possible for their team. And Jack Campbell is the guy that should be starting games going forward, especially if he's healthy. 1.48 goals against, a .945 save percentage. Now, he's 6-0, but anything can happen in terms of these numbers. It's a very small sample size, but here's to hoping that he continues to play like a brick wall and win some more games for the Toronto Maple Leafs, help them win some more games, because he's been pretty good. But the biggest thing is you want this guy to stay healthy, because if he does, I'm okay with letting him run pretty much to the end of the season and hoping that you only have to play Hutchinson a few times, who, by the way, hasn't been that bad. He has like a .915 save percentage. I mean, that's not bad for a backup, considering he's been all right. That game against Edmonton when they went to overtime, that was poor coverage by Austin Matthews, who tried to skate backwards, racing Connor McDavid, and Morgan Riley's not very good defensively. I'm not going to blame Hutchinson for missing a 2-on-1. Matthews and Riley were to blame, in my opinion. Now, we're going to look at some of the options if they were to make a trade. Now, Linus Ullmark is a guy, $916, $2.6 million cap hit. He's not just a guy. I was going to finish my point here. He's a guy that I think the Leafs would probably do well with. I'm not sure if Buffalo wants to get rid of him, unless they're like really, really tanking. Because I think Buffalo would want to hold on to him because he actually is putting up decent numbers, regardless of how bad this team is. That $2.6 million cap hit, they could easily cut that in half. The Leafs could get them to retain 50%, especially, again, most of these guys is if Freddie Andersen or Jack Campbell end up on long-term injured reserve. You can essentially get any one of these guys if Freddie goes on LTIR, especially since you're going to make teams probably eat some of that cap hit, or you're going to get a third team involved so that way they can eat some of that cap hit. But again, we'll run through some of these guys. I like the .916 save percentage, the goals against average at 2.60. It would be a good risk to take, especially if it's Campbell and Ullmark going forward. That's a pretty solid pairing. You got Scott Wedgwood. Now, again, smaller sample size. New Jersey's not the best team either, but .914 save percentage and a $700,000 cap hit. I'm not really sure if Buffalo or if New Jersey would want to move on from Wedgwood. Again, in this, you can see he's a bit of a journeyman. He's been, he's had some time around the league. 28 years old, obviously not an older guy. 28's not too bad. Ullmark's 27. Either one of these guys I would be probably interested in. I think I'd rather go Ullmark just based off of the fact that I think that there's a little bit more experience there in terms of facing NHL competition on a consistent basis and getting shelled because he plays for the Buffalo Sabres. So that's an option. Now this one's kind of like sentimental, I think, for a lot of people. $3.4 million, James Reimer, 13-4-1. He's got a real good record. Carolina is so damn good. Carolina has a couple really good goaltenders, but Mrazek is injured right now. I always say this guy's name wrong, but you guys can see his numbers right there. Alex, I always pronounce his name wrong, so I'm not going to be disrespectful, but look at those numbers. 2.05 goals against and a .927 save percentage. I would think if Mrazek is healthy, Reimer is expendable, especially because of that number. Now, would Carolina be willing to eat some of that money? Possibly. Would a third team come in and eat some of that money? Possibly. And then the Leafs would be able to acquire Reimer. Clearly a ton of experience, a bunch of experience as a Maple Leaf. Just as a fan, I would love to see Reimer, but if it's not the best option, then you don't just get him just because you love him. But I actually kind of think he would do well with the Toronto Maple Leafs again. He's used to the pressure. He played really well while he was in Toronto. He didn't get as much credit as he should have. Just an absolute awesome goaltender. And I really do think splitting time with Campbell, and then if Freddie comes back into the playoffs, having Reimer, Campbell, and Freddie as your three goaltenders would be pretty insane. Now, the big boy on this list, of course, Jonathan Bernier. He's been injured, but his numbers have been real good for a really bad Detroit team. 8-6-0 with a .918 save percentage, 2.78 goals against. He would instantly make the Leafs better. You would hope that Detroit would eat some of that money. And again, possibly you could get a third team involved. But Bernier has just been real good. Another guy experienced in Toronto, of course. He wasn't as bad as people gave him crap for in Toronto either. But the media always likes to go after guys like this. I think Bernier would be one of the bigger acquisitions by any team in this trade deadline if he does get moved. So I would definitely be okay with Jonathan Bernier if the price was right. Ryan Miller, I'm not a big fan. I don't think that the fit would be there. Same thing with Devin Dubnyk. I'm not going to spend too much time there. Very expensive for Dubnyk. Miller would just kind of be a guy that you hope can play a few good games behind Campbell, but there's no sense of wasting an asset and bringing a guy in when Hutchinson is playing better than Miller. So I don't think that would make a ton of sense. David Rittich, again, like I'm not too sure what this is. Like I don't understand Calgary's reasoning behind this. If you have two guys that can play pretty well, like his numbers aren't even that bad. Him and Markstrom together, there's no reason to get rid of one of these guys, especially if you're making a push towards the playoffs, which they are. This one doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Pecorine, this is new to me. Don't really think that this is an option for the Leafs either. The numbers aren't great. Again, if he went on if he sparked a little bit of some of his magic that he's had before in his career, if they eat money and then a third team eats money, I know that's a theme of this video, but $5 million is too much. If you can get both teams involved in a trade, eating money, a 3-team deal, then sure. But I don't really see how this would work. And I also think that he might have a no move clause or a no trade clause. And I don't think that he would want to move on from there. Now, long view candidates. So this would be guys that would be, coming in for multiple seasons. Kemper, don't know if this makes a ton of sense just based off the fact that he's injured, and I don't know if they have a really big decision on who they want to keep. Ronta is another goaltender that they could remove, they could trade. Just real quick, and I think it said in the article too, but this was something I wanted to bring up. If you do acquire a goaltender, you have to remember you can only protect one of them in the upcoming expansion draft. And if the Leafs are going to protect Campbell, then some of these guys might not make a lot of sense unless the Leafs just traded for them for this playoff and then retrade, like just flipped them and traded them again after the playoffs. I don't really know if they have enough time to do that. And if they did, would they be losing assets? Would it just be a waste of a trade? I don't know. But these guys I wouldn't expect to move unless you're also moving out Freddie Andersen, or putting him on long-term injured reserve. $4.5 million cap hit. Kemper is incredible. He's had a real good year, but again, he's injured. I don't think Arizona would be moving on from him. Merzlikins or Jonas Korpisalo. Columbus hasn't been good this year. Merzlikins has been real good. I don't know if they would move on from Merzlikins. I think they want to give him a chance. But Korpisalo, there's a possibility, but he's got a couple more years on that deal. If you can keep cheap goaltenders, just under $7 million tandem is pretty good, especially when these guys are on their game. Korpisalo is better than his numbers are showing right here. So Merzlikins would cost you quite a bit. Korpisalo, I think, would be a little bit cheaper in terms of a trade, but I don't really know if it's worth taking a flyer on him considering he's had a pretty bad year. Georgiev, man, we've heard about this guy a million times. I don't think the Rangers are really in a spot where they know exactly what they're doing with their goaltenders. Shesterkin obviously is their guy going forward. Look at those numbers. That's just ridiculous. Keith Kincaid, again, he's been putting up decent numbers for a backup position. Georgiev could be expendable, decent numbers, but how much are the Rangers looking for? Because before they were asking a ridiculous amount. This still doesn't make sense to me. Apparently, Jonathan Quick has been linked to the Maple Leafs before, and there's teams that are interested in Jonathan Quick. I don't really see it, but if that was the case, he might be a guy worth taking a flyer on. But look at this contract. Nah, I don't really think that this makes a ton of sense. So, yeah, you guys can leave it up to yourself who you think the Leafs should go after, or if it makes any sense for them to go after a goaltender. If I was to take a few picks, I'd say Bernier, Reimer, and probably Allmark. And again, those three would probably be where I hold it. Wedgwood could be a good depth option, regardless of if Freddie or Campbell end up on long-term injured reserve. You might be able to somehow get him for cheap. $700,000 cap hit, nothing too crazy. So let me know what you guys think. This video has gone on for a long time. If you are new, make sure to subscribe. I didn't expect this video to be this long. I was thinking like 8 minutes, but it's going on 15. Thank you guys so much. Please subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And hopefully I'll see you guys in the next video or stream. Peace.